Welcome to the channel, everybody. Today, we're talking about Pablo Escobar, the king of cocaine. Netflix made a killing off this guy, right? Narcos, everybody loves it. But let me tell you something, they're only showing you part of the story. We're talking hidden billions, political puppet masters, and brutality that would make your stomach turn. So, buckle up, because we're about to peel back the layers of this onion and expose the secrets Netflix doesn't want you to know about Pablo Escobar. So, Netflix shows you the cash, right? Mountains of it. But what they don't tell you is that Escobar's wealth, it was on another level. We're talking billions with a B stashed away in secret locations all over Colombia. People are still searching for it today, man. Imagine finding $1 billion in buried treasure. And the crazy thing is, some people think he had secret bank accounts, offshore accounts, shell corporations, all that stuff, with more money than we could even imagine. To run an operation that massive, you need serious financial wizardry. Escobar had accountants, lawyers, bankers, all on his payroll, hiding his money, laundering his cash. Netflix touches on Escobar's political ambitions, right? They give you a glimpse of his desire to be more than just a drug lord, but there's so much more to the story. But they don't really dive into the depths of his influence. His reach extended far beyond what most people realize. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a political force. This dude was practically running Colombia from the shadows. His power was so pervasive that it infiltrated every level of government. He had judges, senators, even presidential candidates in his pocket. These weren't just low-level officials, these were the people making the big decisions. They were all scared of him, and for good reason. His reputation for violence and retribution was well known, and no one wanted to cross him. He had a saying, plata o plomo, silver or lead. It was a simple yet terrifying choice. You take the bribe or you get a bullet. This wasn't just a threat, it was a promise that he kept time and time again. And let me tell you, a lot of people took the silver. The allure of easy money was too strong, and the fear of death was even stronger. He rigged elections, influenced laws, controlled entire government agencies. His manipulation was so thorough that it became almost impossible to distinguish between legitimate governance and his criminal enterprise. He was basically a shadow president, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. His influence was felt in every corner of the country. Netflix shows you the violence, but they don't always connect the dots. The violence was a tool, a means to an end, to maintain his grip on power. He wasn't just a drug lord, he was a master manipulator, a political mastermind. His ability to weave his criminal activities into the fabric of Colombian politics was unparalleled. And the scary part is, even after his death, his influence continues. His legacy of corruption and fear still lingers, a dark shadow over Colombian politics. Now, Netflix does a decent job of portraying Escobar's family, especially his wife Tata and his kids, but there's a whole other side to the story, man. Like, did you know that Escobar had multiple mistresses? And I'm not talking about just flings, I'm talking about long-term relationships, women who had his children, and then there's his brother Roberto. Netflix portrays him as the accountant, the brains behind the operation. But Roberto, he was more than just numbers, man. He was Escobar's right-hand man, his enforcer, his confidant. Chapter 4, Unfiltered Brutality. The real story Netflix won't show. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The violence. Netflix shows you some of it, sure. They show you the bombings, the shootings, the dead bodies. But they can't show you everything, man. It's too much. The reality of Escobar's reign, it was a bloodbath. We're talking thousands of people murdered. Police officers, judges, journalists, innocent civilians, anyone who got in his way. And the methods? Brutal doesn't even begin to describe it. Car bombs, torture, dismemberment, you name it, Escobar's men did it. Chapter 5. Robin Hood or Ruthless Killer, the truth about Escobar's charity. Alright, so Netflix likes to play up this whole Robin Hood image of Escobar, right? They paint him as this larger-than-life figure who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. It's a compelling narrative, no doubt. They show him handing out money to the poor, building houses, funding community projects. You see these images of him surrounded by grateful locals, and it almost makes you forget the darker side of his story. And yeah, he did do some of that. He did build houses, he did hand out money, but let's not get it twisted. But here's the thing, man. It was all part of his game. It was a strategic move, a way to manipulate public perception. He wasn't doing it out of the goodness of his heart. No, he had ulterior motives. He was a master manipulator. He was doing it to buy loyalty, to create a support base among the people. He wanted to be seen as a hero, a savior, to create a support base among the people. He knew that if he kept them happy, they'd be less likely to turn him in, less likely to support the government's crackdown on his operation. He knew that if he kept them happy, they'd be less likely to turn him in, less likely to support the government's crackdown on his operation. It was a calculated move, a way to ensure his own safety and longevity. They'd be less likely to turn him in, less likely to support the government's crackdown on his operation. It was a calculated move, a way to ensure his own safety and longevity, less likely to support the government's crackdown on his operation. It was a calculated move, a PR stunt on a massive scale, and it worked. People loved him. It was a calculated move, a PR stunt on a massive scale, and it worked. People loved him. They saw him as a Robin Hood figure, someone who was on their side. A PR stunt on a massive scale, and it worked. People loved him. They saw him as a Robin Hood figure, someone who was on their side. But in reality, it was all a facade, a carefully crafted image to serve his own ends. Chapter 6. Cartel Wars, the brutal battles Netflix leaves out. Now Narcos touches on Escobar's rivalry with the Cali cartel, right? But they don't really get into the nitty-gritty, the sheer brutality of the cartel wars. These were not just business disputes, man. These were all-out wars with hundreds of casualties, innocent people caught in the crossfire. We're talking bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, torture, each cartel trying to outdo the other to establish dominance. And Escobar, he was right in the thick of it, orchestrating attacks, ordering hits, eliminating his enemies with ruthless efficiency. There was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, for example. So, Netflix paints this picture of Escobar's downfall as this inevitable thing, right? Like it was written in the stars, a fate he couldn't escape. Like he flew too close to the sun, got too big for his britches. The classic tale of hubris. And yeah, there's some truth to that. His ambition did play a role. But the reality is his downfall was a lot more complex, a lot more messy than Netflix lets on. It wasn't just a single misstep, it wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm of factors. A convergence of events that spiraled out of control. The pressure from the Colombian government was relentless, a constant thorn in his side. The DEA was on his tail, closing in with every passing day. And then there were the rival cartels always looking for a chance to take him down. It was all building up, creating a pressure cooker situation. But there was also infighting within his own organization. People were getting greedy, paranoid, trust was eroding, they were turning on each other, making secret deals behind his back, cutting deals with the authorities, trying to save their own skins. Escobar, he couldn't trust anyone. Paranoia was setting in, making him even more isolated. He was surrounded by enemies both inside and outside his inner circle. The walls were closing in, and there was no escape. You gotta hand it to Escobar, man. He knew how to work the media. He understood the power of image, the importance of public perception. He knew that if he could control the narrative, he could control the people. So, he cultivated this image of himself as a man of the people, a Robin Hood figure. He gave interviews, posed for photos, even let journalists into his home. He wanted people to see him as a benevolent benefactor, not a ruthless criminal. And you know what? It worked. People were fascinated by him. They saw him as this charismatic, almost mythical figure. So, Escobar's been dead for decades, right? But his legacy, man, it still hangs over Colombia like a dark cloud. The violence, the corruption, the social divisions he created, it's all still there, simmering beneath the surface. You can still see it in the drug trade, in the gangs, in the violence that plagues certain parts of the country. The seeds of chaos that Escobar sowed, they're still bearing fruit. And then there's the psychological impact. Colombians, they lived through years of terror, of uncertainty. Here's the thing about Netflix, man. They have access to a treasure trove of footage, documents, interviews, all that stuff. But they only show you what they want you to see. They're in the business of entertainment, not necessarily the truth. So, what else is out there? What are they not showing us? Are there lost tapes, unseen footage that could shed even more light on Escobar's life, his crimes, his motivations? Maybe there are government documents, police reports, that paint an even darker picture of his reign. We don't know. Alright folks, that's it for today. We've gone deep down the rabbit hole of Pablo Escobar and man, it's a wild ride. Netflix gives you a glimpse, but they can't show you everything. The truth, as always, is much stranger, much darker, much more fascinating than fiction. So, the next time you watch Narcos, keep that in mind. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more mind-blowing content.